you. Hare Krishna. So just a little few announcements before we begin. We have, anyway, welcome to those who are just joining us for the first time. Thank you for joining us. And I presume you would have read in response to your registration and you got something back. A little few things there. One is that if you'd like to ask questions, please, you're welcome, or to make comments or to give reflections, and we try to encourage that. You're welcome to do so. And to do that, you just simply unmute and you can make yourself known, or you can do so in a chat as well. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, you'll notice that we're coming in on the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, that's because we've been having this Sangha with Bhagavad Gita for quite some time, or at least the beginning from the introduction and then all the way for the 1st and 2nd and 3rd chapter. So you're joining us a little bit after we started. So if you really want to see what we spoke about, if you do, you're quite welcome to go along to the YouTube channel where there's a link there in the registration letter that you got back, which can give you a link to all the previous discussions we had. If you're inquisitive, if you want to do that, you're quite welcome. Okay. And what we can do as well, sometimes it's nice, it's a good problem to have. Sometimes there's lots of questions and lots of devotees would like to contribute, and you may not get an opportunity, you may or may not get. We try to get to everyone. But if that's the case, I'm quite happy to continue the discussion. You can either go into the recording of this reading, which will be there probably before 12 midday tomorrow, UK time, and you can write something in the comments there and ask a question for further clarification. Or you're quite welcome. You see, you've got my email there, and you're quite welcome if you have any questions which you want to ask me personally about the Bhagavad Gita and its application, according to my limited knowledge. You're quite welcome to write me an email. Email seems a bit old-fashioned these days, but it's still being used in some places. Normally it's WhatsApp, things like that. Okay. And without further ado, let's offer some prayers to Srila Prabhupada before we begin. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nirvasisha Sunyavari Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Yeah, and if you like to read, you can put your hand up if you like to read. Each person, but just read the Sanskrit if you can. You don't have to if you don't want to read the Sanskrit, but definitely read the translation and Srila Prabhupada's purport. So there's a few hands going up. Thank you. So now let me share my screen, specifically the Bhagavad Gita. So those who don't have access to it, conveniently for you there, wherever you may be, you can look on the screen or on your phone. But please, if you're driving, don't look on the screen on your phone. Hare Krishna. All right, so here is where we left off, or not where we left off. We're beginning today, text 39. But just a little preview of what we have discussed last week, or what we covered last week. There's a specific section we're on where Arjuna is asking a very, very interesting question to Krishna. Krishna has just been speaking about the importance of doing one's duty, even in the face of difficulties or reversals. Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to stick to his duty. Then Arjuna asks a very interesting question. We see that some people, we understand the principle of the importance of sticking to Dharma or sticking to duty, but we see as Arjuna asked this question, of descendant of Vishnu, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force. Yeah, so that was interesting question, bringing up the point of the path to self-destruction. What makes us do things that are not good for us? What is it that drives, what's that driving force? Like sometimes anyone overeaten before? No one's overeaten before? I'm sure we have. Or, overeaten or oversleeping, etc. There's so many things we may do, or spending too long surfing on the internet or whatever it may be. What is it? What's that force that drives us to do things that we know is not for our benefit? Almost you can say it's like having an unspoken force. What's that unspoken force? And it's brought up here like it's like an enemy. So this is now being discussed now. I had more notes on this. Just see that. Yeah, here's some notes. So studying different commentaries on Bhagavad Gita. Interesting note here. Our actions would be understandable if an enemy had shackled us by force. But what explains our actions when there is no such enemy? Yeah. In other words, it's an invisible enemy. It's an enemy which is inside, not outside. Yeah, someone's just said, yes, I have overeaten. Just looking in the chat here. Overslept. Is the enemy called desire? Yes, Krishna will address that next, So, yeah, so the self-sabotaging temptation. Yeah, this is what Arjuna is asking. So this is what we read last week. We're not going to read these verses. We're going to go to 39, but I just want to read these couple of verses that prelude text 39. So that was 37. That was 36. 37 is here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, and here's the answer. It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Now, Krishna here is not specifically, although it's included, about illicit activities. He's speaking generically about the overall desire to enjoy, or the overall desire to enjoy separately from acts directed by the Lord. Yeah, so the generic, in looking at it from the generic point of view. And 38, as fire is covered by smoke, as the mirror is covered by dust, as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is covered by different degrees of this lust. So where is that? Where is that enemy? Or to the degree, that's next to the degree we see in different degrees, one is covered by this lust, and Krishna speaks about this, and Prabhupada speaks about it in the purport, and he gives three situations where we have the non-moving species. Yeah, they are very much covered, have very little opportunity for understanding self-realization. Yeah, and then eventually comes to the human, and then he mentions about the animal species and then the human. So that's the chance that we have in the human form of life. We have a chance of overcoming this internal enemy. And then we come to text 39. This is where we left off last week. Yeah, so yeah, please, you can put some comments in on the chat here. Katerina mentions, sometimes we are our own worst enemy. Yes, I think I've mentioned this before. Excuse me. It's the one thing my mother used to tell me. You are your own worst enemy. I can never work that out. But afterwards, now reflecting, I have more understanding of that. Yes, we are our own worst enemy, or the forces within are acting against us. And this is what we're discussing now. Okay. All right, let's start the reading. Hare Krishna. So I'll look from the list here. Mano Mohini, Mother, you like to begin?
Yeah.
You can
I
read
will do.
text
Hare Krishna.
39. Hare Krishna.
39. Hare Krishna. Avratam gnanam itina gnani no nityaverina kamarupina konteya duspurena lenacha. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thus the wise living entity, pure consciousness, becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like a fire. It is said in a Manusmriti that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, and thus this material world is called Methuna Agara, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by the sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of the living entity. Therefore, this lust is the symbol of ignorance by which the living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually, that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna, any reflections or comments on this or any questions? Papa's quoting the Manusmriti here. And sure, we know the nature of fire. The more fuel you give it, then the greater that fire becomes. So this is the same principle. The more attention you give it, or the more attention you give, for instance, here, specifically the sex impulse, Prabhupada specifically mentioning, Maitunya Akara. So it's not as if by satisfying that, so-called satisfying that desire, that urge, you're going to come free from it. No, it's going to have its specific, it's going to come back at you again with an even more strength, so just like you're fueling fire. So Krishna will speak on how to give specific, in the next verses coming up, he will give us guidance on how to overcome this.
Prabhu, can I ask a question?
Please? Yes, please, you can.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, you just go outside and everything is about lust in this material world. Wherever you go, the shops, and I mean, we live in London, so it's like there doesn't seem to be anybody trying to like purify their consciousness at all. It's just like a bombardment of the senses. I mean, I feel Krishna's protection, we have this shelter of the devotees and the holy name. So I mean, we can bypass that to a large extent. But I'm just wondering, like, I go to the supermarket, why I have peanut butter in my cupboard. I don't know why I wanted it, why I bought it. I don't particularly like it, but it's there. And I was like, and I didn't buy it for Krishna, but so is that something that is kind of okay, or should I, really get mad at myself for buying that peanut butter? Or I mean, I don't know really how to see it. Is it like, have I failed in controlling my senses, or should I, throw it out?
Yeah, very interesting. Perhaps I could say a couple of things, and perhaps other devotees also might like to add to this as well. Well, sometimes it's explained, I think Prabhupada explained, like sense gratification is a bit like salt, in that you shouldn't put too much, you shouldn't have too little. So the point that Krishna is teaching us is that we should be regulated. We should understand the danger of indiscriminate lust and the degradation which it can lead us to. But at the same time, we shouldn't artificially try to exist on we shouldn't try to live artificially on a platform which is not possible. Well, one thing's for sure, we have a human body and it has its specific needs. And there is, for example, there is an institution, there is a dharmic institution for regulating the attraction between male and female, and that's called the Grihastha ashram. So we have to set ourselves some type of boundaries. Like, for instance, we have to eat. Okay, there's lots of choices you can eat. If you walk down any street in London, or some of you perhaps are in India, might be joining us, there's so many opportunities to eat. So many different shops are attracting your attention. But we decide to live by certain principles. So therefore, we eat only Krishna Prashadam. Yeah. And so, and specifically, you're mentioning a few things, like personally, you have to, I don't think peanut butter is against the regulative principles. But we have to understand that this point, just this point, we should be like salt, shouldn't be too much and shouldn't be too little. Because what can happen if we're not advanced and we try to live like one of our saints in our line is Raghunath Das Goswami, and he practically would not eat anything for sense gratification. And if you read about his life and what he actually ate, or what he would literally every 2 or 3 days, he would eat some buttermilk or drink something little. And if you was to see him, you would be horrified by his physique. Practically, you would get the impression he was starving himself to death. Yeah, it would be quite, but of course he was completely effulgent, So we cannot artificially live like that. So at least we should learn to have a certain, we move within certain boundaries. And that's not only for us, even people who are not following a spiritual path. Well, some people are not very successful, but they know they have to limit themselves. Someone who is, well, I guess they're obese, so they're having trouble to limit themselves in eating. But people know they kind of know, if I go this far and I do this much, then I'm going to suffer. So everyone has choices we have to make when we're walking through the aisles in the supermarkets. But our underlying principle is to at least follow Krishna's direction, and everything that we eat, we offer to Krishna, and Krishna gives a specific type of foodstuff. So in answer to your question, I would say that we have to come to terms with what we actually need. We shouldn't artificially try to live like, say, Raghunath Das Goswami, but within our life, within our situation, we should have our boundaries. There's certain things we eat and there's certain things that we don't eat. We should try as much as possible to actually stick to that. But very interesting live, you could say, real question, which we have to deal with on a daily basis. Anybody else has any comments on that? Yes, would you, Dhananjay Prabhu, please.
Yeah, I'd like to add on whatever you said, is that if you offer whatever food, even if you like something, if you offer it to Krishna, it becomes purified. So even if you have bought peanut butter, whenever you have it, you offer it first to Krishna, then it becomes purified. That is one thing. And whenever you buy something, or whenever you're making something, what I do is, I'm not very consistent, but I do try to bring this thought to my mind, is that would I like to feed this to Krishna?
Yeah.
If it is like, yes, there is no problem, even if it is something very tasty. For example, let's say peanut butter. If it is very tasty, I don't mind feeding it to Krishna, because it could be offered. So
Yeah.
that's fine. This is what I would like to add.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you, Dhananjay. So, like, as what we find that devotees, you can normally spot devotees when they're shopping because they look at the backs of labels. Is this offerable to Krishna? So that's, you could say that's Dhananjay has given us like an underlining kind of guidance there. Is this offerable to Krishna? But so what I'm trying to say as well is that there are some things which we can have, and we shouldn't try to live artificially like sadhus in a cave somewhere. Is that okay, Mother Lavangalatika? Or did you have anything back on that? Or anybody else like to comment on this?
Hare Krishna, a little thing, if I may.
Yeah, Mother Gaia, please.
Sometimes when I feel the urge to buy something, I don't really want it, but I buy it. Eventually, in a couple of days or a week, I need that ingredient. It just comes up, I'm cooking, and I need it. So just wait. Peanut butter will find its place. Trust me, it will come. You know, because sometimes Krishna sends you messages and you don't know why you're doing something. It comes later and you use it and it becomes useful.
So yeah.
It happens.
Yes, yeah.
Hare Krishna,
But
Prabhupada.
I think on the other hand, we should
Everybody
also, on the other hand, we should, like you said, don't penalize ourselves for doing little things that we regret later on, because that is the parts of purification. And if one doesn't make mistakes, then one doesn't make progress. You know, so it's best, okay, learn from it, think back like you thought already. I don't know why I bought it. What am I going to do with it? So so that's already sunk in your mind. So next time you go shopping, you will think, if you're going to go your hands towards something, you'll think, do I really need this? Do I really want it? So it'll be a good lesson to learn from that.
Yeah, and thank you, Mother Chandravali. And I think we can take heart that there is a lot worse things going on in the name of uncontrolled senses in this world. So devotees are very dear to the Lord. So any like little overstepping, you could say, of buying things for their own sense gratification. Krishna's a person. And so Krishna's not gonna, penalize us for that, especially if we, we should offer it to Krishna. So believe me, there's a lot, that's the nature of devotees, like Mother Lavanga's questioning whether she should have peanut butter in her cupboard. I mean, if everyone had that problem on the earth would be a lot better place. So we're doing well in that regard. If that was the only problem,
I just
the
want
temptation that people were dealing with, but it's not, as we can see, it can have catastrophic, consequences of persons who are greedy and licentious and uncontrolled. Even it can leads to murder, etc., etc. Yes, Mother Nimai Mata, was that your voice I heard in the background?
Yeah, I was thinking when she felt that okay, I want to buy, rather it is good thing she bought it, because it came, rather otherwise she wouldn't have bought, and then she would have gone and she would have meditated on that.
Yeah,
that I didn't buy, oh, I should have bought it. So this is better at least. And as far as that is coming under our regulative principles, and of course it can be offered also. So I think it is okay.
Yeah. Okay, Mother Lavanga, you got some nice little insights there. Very interesting.
Yeah, nice. Especially like not to feel bad about, getting things that, maybe borderline, maybe not 100% for Krishna, but somehow you can use it to offer to Krishna. So I was just thinking, yeah, we can't be like Raghunath Das, but at least we can offer what we have, and keep, control our senses as much as possible without being like feeling deprived in some way. Because when you start feeling you're depriving yourself, it's not a good way to make progress, I think.
I think one place says, bring all the nice delectable things and offer it to Krishna. What is the problem? And then you can enjoy it. And you can enjoy it as the prasad.
You can make nice peanut butter balls. Covered with para powder.
Actually, I made a peanut butter sabji. And it was amazing. I've got to say. It was very nice.
We have something in the chat here. Katarina Udin. Katarina, I think Prabhu, where is the border between I am buying something for sense gratification and I'm buying something for sense gratification? I think you need to reword this, Mother. You just repeated the same thing.
No, Prabhu, you left one word there. What I'm actually asking is, when I'm buying something, how do I know, okay, I bought this for sense gratification, and buying something, I think I bought it for sense gratification, and guilt tripping myself.
Well, I think we can probably conclude everything we buy is for sense gratification. But at least we offer it to Krishna. That's the point. It just comes, more or less everything we buy is for sense gratification. Krishna says, Yat karoshi, yat ashnashi, yat tapasi, pantaya. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, do it as an offering unto me.
So, Prabhu,
why would we buy food if it wasn't for our senses?
So, are we saying as a sadhaka, we are whatever we buy for sense gratification because we are sadhakas,
So more or less I'm saying, well, because we have senses, because we need to eat food, everything we buy is to satisfy our senses. But we offer it to Krishna, yat koroshi, yat ashnashi.
And also like when we, living in like London, which is a place like it's very austere anyway. So if you can eat nicely, I mean, Prabhupada was never against like food austerity so much. He was always giving out sweet balls, and he always made sure the devotees ate nicely. I was thinking, we have to so many other austerities. At least we shouldn't like have to eat austerely, because that's
I remember one thing when Prabhupada said to Bhakti Charu Maharaj, these devotees has given up everything. Just make sure they get good prasad.
So
I remember when Maharaj saying that.
We do not eat anything that's not offered to Krishna. That's the bottom line. We should offer it all to Krishna, and that means, and something, Anvesh Shandeep, should it be good to get rid of desire through abstinence or through experiencing them as per Dharma? Well, it depends specifically on what you're speaking about. Specifically, didn't give details, but generally, for instance, the desire to associate with the opposite sex, then you're going to do that. You're going to regulate that. You're going to do that through the marriage, through the institution of marriage. And in a natural way, if that's accompanied by Krishna consciousness, you're going to develop more of a desire for Krishna. And naturally, you have a natural detachment will actually arise. Is it good to get rid of desire through abstinence? Well, you mean through distance? And this actually, we perhaps read on a bit, because the next verse, Krishna is describing describes two principles. Interesting, I was reading just before. Two principles is outer regulation, where Krishna is encouraging us to control our senses as a means for overcoming or distancing ourselves from the sense objects. And then we become distanced from it, and then we become free of the desire from it as we do Krishna consciousness. That's something. So why? Okay, so Daksha asks, "There's why garlic?" Someone needs to mute. I don't know who that is. Okay. Why garlic and onions not allowed in food in ISKCON, please? Well, that's quite a basically they're in the lower modes. That's an easy, a quick answer we can give that. There are specifics that if you want, Daksha, I can send you the details of why we do not take garlic and onions. But basically, they're considered to be of a tamasic nature. Yeah, so therefore we only like to we eat sattvic things. That's a basic quick answer for that. Katerina, again, how can we be openly honest with ourselves and others that there are some desires we have? I came across many senior devotees who have one desire or another, but they feel like I'm twice initiated. I have to hide it and suffer because devotees will judge me. Okay, let's put this question out. Everyone, I read can you see the question on the chat? And after this, we will move on to another verse.
Can you read it, please?
Yeah, how can we openly honest? How can we be openly honest with ourselves and others that there are some desires we have? I came across many senior devotees who have one desire or another, but they feel like I'm twice initiated. I have to hide it and suffer because devotees would judge me. So there's a question. I guess I'll say one thing. Others can also comment on this as well. I think it takes some maturing in devotional service. It takes a number of years to practice. Sometimes it takes a few years to actually understand that we're conditioned souls. and to accept that. In the beginning, we may artificially try to practice and see ourselves as having no material desires. Yeah. But then as we progress in Krishna consciousness, we come to terms with our attachments, but then we learn how to manage them in such a way that it's not going to be an impediment for me. Yeah. And you learn how to dovetail those particular desires, depending what they are, but you learn how to use them and dovetail them in Krishna consciousness. One example, our previous temple president, Jayani Prabhu, very nice devotee, he joined, he came from he was a musician when he joined. He was a lead singer in a band in America, and he would play the bass. And when he came to Krishna consciousness, he just stopped everything. He stopped it all. But he used to keep his bass. He had his bass. He was attached to his bass guitar. So he hid it in the ashram so that no one could see it. And then there was what we call bhajans were going on in a temple room. And he happened to, I happened to see his bass guitar. So he was feeling, I could see he was feeling a little bit guilty about having that attachment to his music. So I encouraged, no, go downstairs, go, because the temple room's downstairs. You go and use it in Krishna's service. You play the bass for Krishna. So anybody else can also comment, but just to summarize that, it's coming to terms with our nature, but we should be able to manage our specific attachments in such a way that there will be some attachments that we have to, as the previous comments said, we have to abstain from. Yeah. Otherwise, we will not be able to make progress in spiritual life. Yeah. So there will be some things. Other things, then it's just a case of managing it in such a way and coming to terms with who we are and where we are, and not feeling guilty about that, but just progressing from our Pacific platform. Anybody else on that? Mother Chandravali?
I think we should be honest to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, and then work with it, and always go when you have desires that you really don't want them, or even like you know, feelings, whatever, you just go to Krishna. You accept that desire. It's not the right thing, you want the desire to be there, but always go and pray to Krishna that you acknowledge it, and then ask for Krishna's mercy to help you get rid of it.
Yeah, if it's not favorable for your devotion.
If it's not favorable, yes, you can, please help me, Krishna, because on your own you cannot do anything.
Yeah,
but you have to acknowledge it and go to Krishna and ask for.
Yeah, please
Krishna's
help me deal with this. Yeah,
yeah, deal
that's
with it.
also just came to mind on that very good point Mother Chandravali is making, is that it is important for us to be honest with ourselves and what we need to practice Krishna consciousness comfortably. For instance, you could go and live in Vrindavan. Okay, if you're a lady, you could go and live in Vrindavan, you can shave your hair, you can wear white, and you can live in an ashram with another 200 widowed ladies. But then you can come to terms with your particular conditioning, come to terms with your particular needs, and you can have a flat somewhere in London or somewhere else where you can feel more comfortable and practice your Krishna consciousness from that perspective. So you're just being honest with what you need. Yeah. So I think that the good point here is it is good to be honest, but at the same time, being honest doesn't mean that we engage in illicit activities. No, we're not saying that. Those activities which can lead to degradation, we have to abstain from. You know.
I can give you my example. Like I lost my husband 9 years ago, and then there was this mission. Like, do I go into white or do I carry on colors that I'm wearing? You know, okay, you have to tone yourself down because you've lost a husband and you're trying to practice Krishna conscious. But for me to go into white would not work because I am quite, in a way, naughty. I do say things, I smack brahmacharis, things like that. I do things like that. Now, to go in white, I would have to reform myself completely. And that's just, I won't be able to do it. And then if I like control all that, then my consciousness would be all about, I can't do this, I can't say this, I can't, you know, no, I want to be Krishna conscious. I want to think about Krishna, not what, how I have to behave, whatever I have to do. Of course I have to behave. I'm older, I'm a widow, so I have to behave in that way.
Yeah.
But.
And thank you. Well, I'm just appreciating what wonderful answers get given on these questions here, you know. So there you go, Mother Katerina. I'm sure there's lots of things there which you can meditate upon. That's your question.
One point.
Guruji, I'd like to add one point.
There's two people there. Mother, was that Gaia? Was that?
I was thinking we shouldn't compare. We shouldn't compare with
Nitai Mata.
devotee or junior devotee. We are all individuals. We have a special connection with Krishna. This is very important. We are all unique, and Lord will guide, as Mother Chandravali very, very rightly said. We go to Krishna. We can't say, "Oh, other devotees are there. They have desires." No, we are nobody to compare.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nitai Mata. There was someone else had something there. I heard a voice, but
Probably me. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Mother Shauda, welcome. You made it. Mother Shauda was trying to get the link for some time.
I managed to get it today.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Welcome, Hare Krishna.
I just want to say about Mother Chandravali said about the wearing the things. And I don't wear the white things. I think for the reason the connection was with the body, but the soul is still there. Is hovering around somewhere in another body or something. So why should I give up my things which I like to wear, which I like to eat, which I like to put on? So because my relation is not with the body, it was with the Atma, which is not gone. So I'm keeping with what I was wearing.
And what
Yeah.
I was
So, yeah, so here we go. Yeah, thank you, Mother Shelter. So here you have Mother Karuna. Here's devotees being natural and being truthful, you know, being natural, acting in an honest way and being comfortable with that as well. So, so it's not compulsory, for example, to wear white.
No. Murli Prabhu, can I say something as
Please,
well?
yes, you can. This is Mother Suniti Priya, one of the
Bhakti Churu Maharaj used to say that you dress for Krishna when you come and see the deities, and he's happy because he sees you how you dress up as well. So we dress up for Krishna.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice meditation. And actually this morning, I was dressing Radha Krishna this morning. I was blessed to have that service. And so as a brahmachari, normally brahmacharis are known for not ironing their clothes, but I ironed my dhoti this morning. So I'm coming before Krishna. Okay, let's read another verse, shall we? And let me
There was, I think, question in the chat, right?
Okay. How to teach discipline to senses in such a way that they come to terms with our devotion. Well, that's regulation, being regulated, and then it takes some time, but gradually the mind, intelligence, and senses will get the message. Yeah. Once we engage in the activities of Krishna consciousness and we refrain from other activities, there's going to be some, in the beginning, it will be a challenge. But then as we practice Krishna consciousness, our mind will start to become more of a willing participant in our endeavors rather than going against us. So that's why we have to be a little bit patient with we have to be a little bit patient with our practice of Krishna consciousness. And sometimes there may be a relapse, but we shouldn't become hopeless. We just continue on the same path, and gradually, our mind and senses will start to become more, they will start to become more attached to our Krishna conscious activities than other activities. So stick with the process, and gradually you will see a transformation. Things you could not dream of giving up, you will not give them a thought later on in your Krishna consciousness. It will no longer be a challenge. That's Krishna's grace. Okay, let's read text 40. Let's welcome back to Mother Sahachari. Welcome back, Mother Sahachari. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I heard you was in Hungary. Very Hare Krishna.
I came back.
Okay, you can read text 40.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful discussion on that verse. Thank you, everyone. Let's see where we go on this next verse.
Yeah. Indriyani manobuddhir asyadhistanam uchyate eter vimohati isha gnanam avrata dehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this last. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Purport. The enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul, and therefore, Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. Mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, and thus we hear about sense objects. The mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification. And as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the spirit soul. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and the identify itself with matter, and thus with the mind and senses. The spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes this as true happiness. This false identification of the spirit soul is very nicely explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:84-13. Yasmat buddhi kuna petri dhakte swadhi kala trisai bhauma yachadihi yatheta buddhi selilena kachidi nasve abhigneshu sa evago karana. A human being who identifies this body made of 3 elements with himself, with his self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be kinsmen, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to the places of pilgrimage simply to take a bath rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any reflections on that, or questions? Basically here, now that the enemy has been identified, and now specifically before we can begin addressing or dealing with the enemy, where is the enemy to be found? And that's what Krishna is describing here. And then the next verses, the concluding verses, I think there's 42 verses in 43 verses. The next verses, Krishna's going to give us instructions on how to overcome and defeat this enemy. But for now, where is this enemy situated? So here, very specific places. Prabhupada specifically mentions the mind, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So any questions on this or reflections?
Prabhuji,
yes.
the paragraph from next, the intelligence department becomes a capital of such lustful propensities.
Yes.
That part was a little bit difficult to understand.
Yeah, well, to begin with, there is a natural proclivity between the senses and the sense objects, almost like a magnetic attraction. You could say they are made for each other, although the senses originally made for giving pleasure to Krishna as Rishikesha, but the senses have their natural proclivity, so they attract. Now, how one goes about and how one plans to meet the sense objects, that's where the intelligence comes in. Yeah. So for instance, a man is attracted to the girl. Okay, he has an attraction there. So next he's going to connive, or he's going to think, he's going to plan how he can get that girl's association. And for that he's going to use the intelligence. Yeah, so already his senses, or within the senses, or actually the mind, the senses is the mind. Yeah, the mind is like a repository. In other words, the senses give information which the mind then holds, like a hard drive, so to speak, and then the intelligence then comes into play, and from it one plans to satisfy the promptings of the mind, which the mind is in association with the senses and sense objects. So then the intelligence, as Prabhupada says, the intelligent department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. So that's why there's this word buddhi yoga. The idea is that if we purify the intelligence, then we can redirect the mind and we can redirect the senses. And that's what we're doing by discussing Bhagavad Gita and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, is that we are collaborating our intelligence. So, for example, we may have certain things we did, certain things we ate, certain places we went, certain things we listened to before we took up Krishna consciousness. So the samskara is still scarred. It's those attractions still remain within the repository of the mind. Now, if we're engaging in hearing and chanting, our intelligence, when our senses become attracted to those things, our intelligence will recollaborate and redirect us. Simply put, no, okay, but this will not be in your spiritual interest. if you go in this direction. So that means our intelligence has become purified. So that's what comes if we're, and that's why it's recommended that we engage regularly in hearing scripture, because we need to keep our intelligence sharp so it can make good discrimination and not be waylaid by the beckonings of our senses. So, is it okay, Dhananjay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, as Prabhupada says here, intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the spirit soul. So lust intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false identification. And then Prabhupada then quotes this verse, Yasatmi Buddhi Kadapi Tridaduke. Yeah, false identification. And that's part of or the essence of our problem is misidentification with the body. Yeah. Okay, anything else on this? Otherwise, we can start to get to some solutions. Although some solutions have been hinted at here, Prabhupada says he's given hints of where the enemy is. So the next, well, let's read next verse then, text 41. Mother Rajkishore, you like to read?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Tasmat tumindriyanyadhyau niyamya bharatarshava papamanam prajahiyenam gnana vijnana nashanam. Translation. Therefore, O Arjun, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Purport. The Lord advised Arjun to regulate the senses from the very beginning so that he could curb the great sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self-realization and specific knowledge of the self. Jnana refers to the knowledge of self as distinguished from non-self, and in other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Vijnana refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul's constitutional position and his relationship with the supreme soul. It is explained thus in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.31. Jnanam param guhyam me yad vijnana samanvitam sarahasyam tadangam cha grahana gaditam maya. The knowledge of the self and the supreme self is very confidential and mysterious, but such knowledge and the specific realization can be understood if explained with the various aspects of the Lord.
By the Lord himself. Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita gives us that general and specific knowledge of the self. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord, and therefore they are simply meant to serve the Lord. The consciousness is called Krsna Consciousness. So from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krsna Consciousness, and therefore one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. Lust is only the perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness for the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So from any stage of life or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn the lust into love of God, the highest perfectional stage of human life.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mother Rajkishore. Okay, any specific reflections on this or questions? here Krishna's given a specific direction. So he's describing about outer regulation. And then the next verse, he's going to speak about the principle of inner redirection. Yeah. So speaking about, which we mentioned before, regulating the senses. So having boundaries. Yeah. Having specific virtues that we live with and being regulated. This is one of the means of overcoming the enemy, lust specifically. Yeah.
How does one regulate the senses? By what method?
Well, one thing is as we mentioned, is observing or coming to terms, or observing or being in knowledge of what will happen if we don't regulate the senses. Yeah. Even materially, even persons understand at some point, if they take so much or they drink so much, that's going to have an adverse effect. Yeah. So that's very inspirational, can be very inspirational. Yeah. To regulate, to understand the importance and the actual need for it. But another method as well is, as we practice Krishna consciousness, it's not just controlling our senses. Actually, the activities of bhakti give a very sweet taste. It's called param drishna navartate. So it's not just negation through force, it's negation, or it's just being naturally detached from the senses and the sense objects, because you're experiencing a more sublime sense of peacefulness and happiness by following the principles of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. But at least there should be an understanding of our precarious condition if we don't regulate our senses. You know, it gets to the point where if someone doesn't have any regulation of the senses, then they have to be locked up in a prison. Yeah. Yeah. And Krishna says Krishna explains quite clearly that there's 3 gates leading to hell. There's lust, anger, and greed. Yeah. So therefore, it's in our best interest to regulate our senses. But it has to be done with intelligence, as we just previously mentioning. We shouldn't artificially try to starve ourselves. Instead, we replace it by eating Krishna Prasadam, and we had that discussion. Is that what you was thinking of, Mother Chandravali? Anything else than that? From
Yes. Also, I was thinking that we must, to control our senses, that we must make sure that we follow the principles, we follow our sadhana properly. We should be fixing our sadhana.
Yeah. And also, we should come to terms with actually that I remember definitely for myself, before coming to Krishna consciousness, I was very much attracted to the philosophy. But when I saw the lifestyle, I was not attracted at all. Was not attracted to the lifestyle, which meant regulation, yeah, and controlling the self. But actually, I was fooled and I was bewildered. I was thinking that I wouldn't be happy and I wouldn't be peaceful, but I was wrong. You know, I could persons who, you know, persons mainly, they do not really understand or appreciate the level of happiness that can actually come from controlling their senses. They're in illusion. They think that happiness comes from engaging the senses any way or anyhow. But actually, real contentment in life comes from living a regulated sattvic life. And that's so, you know, that's so fulfilling, where persons without that, and persons do not have faith in it. That's why it's very important for devotees to give their association to others. You know, I remember I was quite excited. I was quite enthralled. The first time in my life, I actually met people who actually live by some principles and follow some virtues. And it was quite a phenomenon for me, and and it was really it really affected me, you know, coming from the background that I did. So there's a few thoughts on that. Anybody else? We have a couple of minutes left. Oh, we're on 7 o'clock.
We're overwhelmed with questions in the chat. There's like 3.
All right. Okay. So we might. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. You can sign off if you like, devotees. It's fine. But there's a few questions here. Okay. Thank you for ringing a bell on the chat, Smother. Oh, there's quite a bit here. I don't get time. Okay. How to teach discipline to senses in such a way that they come in terms with our devotion. How to teach discipline to the senses. Well, I think I've just explained that. Yeah, I've just answered that, you know, how to teach discipline.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, just one thing, just that you associate with those who are leading a virtuous life, and you will be inspired to actually do the same. Yes, Mother Chandravali.
I was thinking what Prabhupada said, like when a child is asking for a toy or you want to take that toy away, then you give them something else to.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, we just replace it with Krishna conscious activities. Yes, thank you, Mother Chandra. That's a better answer, I think. So
I also understand that mind, intelligence, they are a gross body, the subtle body. So they're still matter. It's a spirit, soul, and matter, they don't get on. So if an eye sees an object, that object, the eye is only a spoon, like a sense object is a spoon, and it will only travel to senses, mind, and intelligence, and they will decide if they want to see it or not see it. But the spirit soul at the back of it will be impressed if somebody sings Hare Krishna, that because Hare Krishna is non-different from Hare Krishna. So then the sound will travel, or eyes will travel from Krishna's.
I want to say something. Can I say something?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Yeah, I just remember one verse from the chapter 4, Maharaj Ambrish, how he was engaging all his senses. Do you remember this verse, Prabhu?
Yes.
Yeah, all those senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, and this is how we can train our mind, our intelligence, provided we know what is the goal of our life.
Yeah, very good point. So that's the actual answer to your question, Mo, is that there it is to engage the senses in Krishna's service, to replace the activities that we do that are in connection to Krishna. And something for, I was wondering, the Sastra speaks about perverted reflection of the spiritual world in terms of love. But I wonder, does it also apply to friendships? Because somehow I noticed that if Krishna is not in the center of the friendship ends. Yes, it's answered that question. Yes. How can we blind ourselves by keeping eyes open? How can we deafen ourselves while keeping ears open? How we can control? That's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explains that we withdraw the senses like a tortoise withdrawing its senses within a shell. So, for instance, you may come in contact with things that you was conditioned by previously, by hearing or by tasting, but with your intelligence, then you curb or you bring yourself under control. You kind of withdraw, and you don't contemplate or you don't entertain, and that takes a certain level of spiritual strength. Yeah, and that's in the next verse. Krishna answers this as well. So that detachment doesn't mean we've been everything and everyone in our life. Detachment means attachment. Yeah, that's good. Detachment doesn't mean we've been everything and everyone in our life. Detachment means attachment to Krishna. And then I think, as Mother Chandravali was mentioning, everything automatically starts to fit in place. Yeah. Sometimes they become distraction. Yeah. Sometimes distraction even to chant the holy name, no doubt. But Krishna says, keep on trying, keep on doing. From wherever the mind wanders, bring it back. Hare Krishna. All right, let's pause there and we'll continue tomorrow. So please, we'll just continue with this discussion tomorrow. If you have any further questions, please, you can jot them, note them down. You can send me like that, and we can, let's just carry on the discussion tomorrow. Okay. Thank you everyone for your kind attention, and hope to see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.
Gracefully, Prabhu.
Krishna. Thank
Yes,
you.
for the wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Krishna Krishna. Hare 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 Ram.
Hare Hare.
Ram, Hare